Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Emerging Tech series of Leadership and Insurance podcast. And this is the podcast where we speak to technology founders, executives and leaders from the world of insurance and insurtech. Today, I'm very lucky to be joined by Martijn, who's CTO from Insify. Martijn, how are you doing?
All good, thank you. I just came back 2 days ago from Iceland, where I watched the active volcano erupting for the past 2 weeks, which is baffling.
Very nice. Yeah, you were saying off camera there, and unusually sunny in Iceland.
Yeah, and then still with the volcanic eruption, which is kind of interesting. It's like, I think it's about 800 years that it's been quiet in the area, and now the volcano is erupting. There's about 5 volcanic systems there. And once it starts, then it can last for decades with active periods, which is super close to the capital. So it's maybe not a country that Insify should scale its insurance to too quickly.
Yeah, exciting and somewhat terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
But look, thank you for coming on. As I say, it's great to have you and representing Insify. And just as we always start on these podcasts, I'd love if you could just introduce yourself, your career, your kind of background within tech as a tech leader, and how you ended up in the world of insurance or insurtech.
Yeah, actually, I would say I have no idea how I ended up in here. So I have a kind of a funny background. I started in the south of the Netherlands at Philips Research, which at the time was the largest still corporate research facility, I think, in the world. Which after IBM and HP labs, etc., closed their research. And I was working on embedded processors, really chip design, processor design, lower software layers. And from there on, ended up starting a startup, which I ran with co-founders for 10 years, also super techy in software parallelization. And then gradually got into coaching more and more deep tech startups. And at some point got picked up by an Australian, of all places, fintech company deep in the US mortgage market, direct lending, and from there the step to insurtech, was a small step, because basically insurance, in the sense, runs 10 years behind the disruption that happened in fintech. So there's still a lot of room, and then you kind of understood, like, okay, this is the place to be.
Nice.
And if you look at Insify, so I joined Insify early on when there was still a very small team, and Insify actually was founded by Koen Thijssen, who and the co-founders, and Koen ran a scale up before, a successful scale up in e-commerce, and I kind of looked at insurance for his company and found out, you can't get that online. He called up an insurer, and the insurer said, no, we don't sell to customers. Talk to a broker. It's a cumbersome process, and paid a lot of money. And then as the company scaled, then at some point somebody broke in and stole a bunch of laptops, and quite a big hit for a scaling company to go tell your investors that you lost so much money. But luckily they were insured. But the insurer wouldn't pay out because they just moved to a new office and they didn't update the insurer yet with the new office, which is kind of right next door, the old one. And so the insurer said, no, it's a different address, so sorry, we won't pay. And then Koen looked at this and said, okay, this has to change. And to his own surprise, he kept being a loyal customer because it was too much hassle to change. And he said, no, this is an industry where we can, where there's still so much room to do better for the customer, that he started Insify.
Fantastic. Love that. Love the kind of background and kind of briefly describe the mission there. But I guess to clarify on who Insify are and what is the mission more specifically, could you just quickly run us through that?
Yeah, so it basically starts with there. So we really love the entrepreneurs, the people that kind of run the economy. It's from the hairdresser to the software consultant to the carpenter. And so these are the kind of, you know, micro and SMEs, I would say, and they were just so badly underserved by the industry that we said, let's do that different. And so it's fully online, fully digital, but really with a focus to the customer, to keep it simple. And our kind of tagline is always keep it simple, but also fair, and kind of go back to where insurance is supposed to be. It's a formula. And if you do the formula right, then it's fair for everybody. And do that with tech and data at the core, to basically have a modern way to evaluate risk the right way.
And you've been there for just over 3 years now. Quite a journey, you know, particularly in the last kind of 12 to 18 months, I believe, and raised your Series A very recently in June. You know, it's something that for anyone that's raised funds or had a really, I guess, that going through that experience in the last 12 to 18 months, I'm always interested to touch upon that, you know, how you personally and as a company, how was that experience? You know, 2022 was extremely difficult and or towards the end of, and certainly 2023 is not eased up. Like, how was the experience, and how did it compare to your kind of first rounds? Because I think that's 2 Series A, I believe.
Yeah, so we started with a seed round and early on, and then raised our Series A when the hype was still full on, I would say. So and we raised that with Excel, which was an incredible experience. Also for me in the past, ran several startups, or was part of several startups, and also the funding rounds, which was always very difficult. And this was a different experience with Excel. They basically looked at, and they did their homework, and they really studied the insurtech and insurance market, and basically came down to, okay, what's needed here is a player that understands, you know, partnerships, embedded insurance, SME, fully digital journeys, and a tech base, but also a solid insurance base. And then they went out to look for those companies, and they found Insify to be a perfect match. And so that was really nice match. We're really happy with that. And then, you know, the whole market grounded down to a halt from the VC side, basically. And what I think the realization was, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on unit economics and payback period of less than 12 months. Basically, if you compare for less than 12 months, payback period in insurance is rather weird in a sense. But if you compare as an investor, you could invest in a SaaS company where that's totally normal, and an insurance company, and then it's like, well, where do you put your money? But ultimately, the push is on understanding that insurance, in a sense, is a different beast, and that you have to build a healthy book, and that means you have to understand your risk and governance, and that's a very different play. And in distribution is hard, in insurance, etc. You can't just go and you know, buy the customer or buy portfolios and grow. Well, you can grow that way, but ultimately then you don't control your book. So I think what Insify set apart there was that typically you see the insurtech is either founded by somebody from the insurance domain that gets the insurance foundations right, but then is missing on the tech, or by tech people that get the tech right and know everything about APIs and things like that, but don't get the insurance right. And I think we built a solid foundation in both insurance and tech, and that ultimately got our Series A extension this year with Munich Re Ventures, which then gives comfort to the other investors that there's somebody that understands insurance that says, well, these guys know what they're doing. And I think combined with that, we really focus on execution incredibly much, and so we basically always met all our aggressive targets, and VCs don't see that a lot, and that really gives a lot of comfort to raise in this kind of period.
Yeah, so interesting, just getting that sweet spot between insurance and insurtech, which you feel has been one of the bedrocks for your guys' success. And I guess kind of going back to what you kind of touched on around, you know, we don't grow that way in insurance or insurtech, we kind of grow differently. what's next for you guys? You've secured the funding. It's now all about heads down. What is from your perspective anyway, as a CTO there, what's next for you guys in the team?
Yeah, so we basically we set out to make an impact to these entrepreneurs in Europe, and that's kind of the goal that we try to realize, to really make life better for these entrepreneurs to run their business and know that the risk is covered in some way, and to do that, well, you want to be in Europe and not just in the Netherlands where we started. And the Netherlands is a nice market to take off, but ultimately the impact is limited to the size of the Netherlands. And so we landed our Series A to scale internationally. And I think the moment we announced the Series A round, I think a few months later, we went live in Germany and France, France soon after. And ultimately it's the rest of Europe to cover. But we do that, the Insify way. So not just grow and open up countries like crazy, but really make sure that we deeply understand the customers, the demands, that tailor it to what customers really need, and get the unit economics right, get the loss ratios right. And so really build that healthy insurance book and for it to last, in a sense.
Yeah.
And to your question of what is that, asked from the CTO on the tech side is basically there's a lot of technology behind tailoring. It's very, very closely to what the customer needs. But at the same time, if you want to cover the whole of Europe to make, to cover, let's say 80% of all the entrepreneurs in Europe, then you can't do that by building new tech stacks for each country or for each product. So you want to do that out of a single, in a sense, code base and a scalable technology that can handle that. And that puts a lot of constraints on how you architect this and how you build this and what kind of processes you use.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the commercial, you and I spoke months ago about how staggering the commercial insurance market is, yet existing product offerings are really tailored towards the needs of small businesses specifically, or entrepreneurs. The small to medium enterprise market is massively underserved when it comes to business insurance. Many legacy providers failing to offer that digital friendly, streamlined and competitive offering for you. What's wrong with the market and small to medium enterprise and freelance insurance? Why has it been unserved, and what are the challenges for an insurtech that are trying to change it?
Right. Yeah. So I would say it's SME is now sexy from the VC perspective to come back to that. And actually we always set out to do the hardest thing, which is actually the micro SME, the mostly freelancers, small companies. That's an order of magnitude even harder. I would say, in a sense, as SME is easy, micro SME is hard, but together it is. But so I think what you see there is that the premiums are very low. If you just insure one single freelancer, you also have a high churn. Very often, the freelancer would just get insured to get a certificate of insurance to their partner that they work for, and the moment they have the certificate, cancel the insurance even. In the sense, high fraud. Very price sensitive, and then extremely tailored, because it's really different if you're a carpenter or a plumber or a health worker, it's very, very different. And then still there's still the vision that insurance you don't really need. And so we launched our own disability insurance, and if you look there, it's kind of the first thing on the mind of an entrepreneur is, okay, if I start freelancing, for instance, what if something happens to me? How is my family going to be covered? But still 20 to 30% of the entrepreneurs don't have something, only have something for disability insurance. The rest doesn't. It's because they deem it too expensive and in a sense, not tailored enough, too difficult to get. And I think it's underserved there is that for the incumbents, the big insurers, they are too far removed from the customers to do that, understanding and tailoring. And it's an incumbent insurer basically, well, if you ask it in the Dutch blunt style, I would say is a big organization to manage the distribution and reseller model. And but even for brokers, the cost of sales for a micro SME is just too high. And so you need a lot of volume and a lot of automation, and that doesn't really fit with kind of the tech capacity that's currently in the market. And also the tech capacity is not something you can buy. There is no real ready-made solution for SME and with all the tailoring and everything. Maybe you can buy now a core system that can handle embedded insurance, let's say for an e-bike or things like that. But for SME, it's the systems, at least I haven't seen them yet.
And you've clearly changed the space with regards to SME, and you kind of touched on disability insurance, a hugely complex area. Like from the platform perspective, the opportunity that you see within embedded insurance is there for everyone to see, but executing is a whole other beast. Like from the tech side of things coming into Insify, what were the obvious challenges for you, and are they still prevalent today, or has that evolved into, well, more and more challenges, or do you feel like you've got a handle on it now?
Yeah, I think we're getting there. So I think there's a whole bunch of roadblocks that make it hard to change. Yeah? And then actually answering your previous question, I think the customers don't trust you or don't trust insurance in general.
Yeah,
I think we looked and we said that roughly 50% of the premium is actually actually paid out in claims, and it makes you wonder, like, where does the other 50% go? And then if an insurer has maybe a 5 to 7, let's say, profit margin, and that it gets under pressure because of market pressure, or then what do you do as an insurer is you're going to add some more clauses, because you can't increase prices because customers don't like that. You don't fire your middle managers because your middle managers on your team doesn't like that. So you look at the high claims you paid out, and you say, well, let's add some clauses and exclusions, and that results in very complex products with lots of inclusions, exclusions, and the feeling that customers need advice and regulatory then stepping in and saying, well, yeah, you need extra, rules like wet signatures on documents to make sure it goes right. And at the same time, the customer reacts with very high fraud levels. Like 40% of claims on P&C or 60% even on disability is basically fraud. And as a reaction, the insurance industry kind of, at least in our view, treats every customer like a criminal. It's like, well, hey, you're probably a fraudster unless proven otherwise, which in our view is fundamentally wrong. Let's start with trusting the customer and trying to change that. And so how and then the challenges for us to do that is basically that you'd have to change that kind of end to end, that mindset and that approach. And then if you want to do that, you go and look out, you say, okay, let's look for tech stack, but let's first look at insurance products, maybe as a broker, maybe as an MGA, we're currently both. Then you see that the products have too many questions, too many silly exclusions. They're not ready for kind of, simple customer journey or very tailored customer journey. And so we had to push a lot to change that. And then the partners are not ready for the kind of volume that you and the automation that you need to make the unit economics right, and the integration that you need. And the tech systems out there are not basically ready for that same tailoring and automation. There's no really core system that you can buy that solves this out of the box. And at the same time, if you want to buy a system, then the unit economics of micro SME or the premium is in a sense so low that you can't afford these systems. And so you're in a kind of catch-22 there. So our approach has been basically, build our own insurance product, heavily push our partners to make that product, customer friendly, remove exclusions there where we know the customer won't understand them, for instance, because then you're not being fair and to our values. And from a tech approach, we started basically just building very quickly, learn throw it away, and then build a new product from scratch again a couple of times until we settled on, okay, this is the tech approach that we need here, and now that we know that we can achieve product market fit with that.
And what is the tech approach like? And because there's things you can do to affect an insurance, there's things that are still with regulations, etc. If I could just ask you, what's the solution to, solving this problem? If you could just do it and you could implement it, forgetting things being pushed through or adoption, like what's the answer from kind of Martin's perspective? What does the industry need from a tech stack? What technologies will have the most influence? Is it, the buzzword of the year so far, AI and machine learning, or is it more than just a simple quick fix?
Yeah, I think it's a quick fix. I haven't seen it, and I don't believe in it. So our approach has been, I always compare it like the Unix versus the Windows model. Well, Linux nowadays. If you're old enough like me, then you know what Unix is. But maybe that's my embedded background. But so if you look at Windows, it's a one size fits all, everything integrated, and therefore you have a lot of benefits because it's all integrated and easy. But if you want to do something tailored or something specific, then it's almost impossible. And you see a lot of the kind of core systems out there are following this Windows model where everything's in there, but then if you want to do something specific that others don't do, you can't. Or you start paying hefty consultancy fees and tailoring fees, etc. And the Unix model is much more, you build a modular kind of foundation, like the internet in a sense, like a foundation that's actually nobody knows how it works, but you can build all kinds of stuff on it and connect. And Unix is the same thing. It's a foundation where you can have kind of single responsibility modules that do one thing but do it really, really well, and you can exchange them easily, and you can basically get the best in class module, but then connect them in a flexible way. And then I think for us, it's been very important that data and obviously APIs are kind of part of that foundation, but it goes beyond that. But then data is really treated as a first-class citizen. So we really invested early in those foundations and in this kind of a modular approach, as well as the data side to it. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry, on you go.
Well, so if you do that, then I think then the challenges that we faced here is on the one hand, our partners, because the partners still come from look at, for instance, reinsurance. It's in a sense the old insurance industry, and the demands that we kind of learned that we had crazy demands to them, which actually was a surprise to us. We didn't expect that. Very simple. For instance, let's do a rating with a pricing engine, and then a technology provider would say, "Oh yeah, we can do that. We have a really, really fast rating engine." We go, "Oh great, yeah," and it does it in about 6 seconds if you have a simple rate. And we go like 6 seconds. We want 20 milliseconds, or 2 minutes to get a document out. Or digital connections to partners with systems that are only on premise, still written in COBOL maybe.
COBOL, jeez.
so literally, I think. So if you compare that, and I read an article on Tesla this morning and gigafactories. I mean, in a sense, we would have to build like a hybrid car. We actually want to build an electric car. But there's no charging facilities everywhere. We still have to interface with gasoline, and so we can't change the whole world at once as a small scale up in a sense. So that forces us to build a hybrid car, which is an incredibly complex piece of engineering, way more difficult than an electric car in essence.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that was my next question on the challenges that presents going down the modular system. The advantages are clear to probably anyone from a tech perspective, flexibility, customization, and when you attach it to insurance, scalability, faster development, deployment, and reduced complexity, most importantly. But as you say, those challenges that present itself, it's not easy to go down that route. So yeah, really interesting that you guys chose to build it in that way.
Yeah, I think also if you look at it from, let's say you're an insurtech, tech vendor, and you're selling, a core system, then and then we come along, and then we're a proper pain to those vendors, I think, because basically it's much easier to sell the Windows approach, a point solution that's in let's say simple embedded insurance for, let's say, an incumbent that tries out a new country, and then there's no pressure on API quality or performance or the product tailoring. And a modular approach maybe is pretty hard for a tech vendor, because you only sell maybe one module instead of a very big one where you can ask more money. And if it's all if we have to hook it up in our infrastructure or our foundations, then it requires savvy customers, which not are always there, and and the customers that don't have it will ask you for features to again build that Windows system. If you now look at InsurTech, every system that is there offers some kind of data warehouse in it, or some kind of massive database for all the data, and some AI on it, and reporting. And if you do it modular, then you say, well, we have a data platform, so we like to connect it there. And so I don't want your platform, but I do want a stream of transactions coming out. Do you have that? And then the answer is no, we don't have it, but you have to pay for the data warehouse. And you can get a CSV export, and that's yeah, and it makes sense from the vendor's perspective, right? But for the approach of building a modular system out of components where you don't want to build everything yourself. Actually, I don't like to not invent it here. I'd like to buy stuff. I'd like to buy these kind of single responsibility modules, but that's proven to be a challenge.
Yeah, interesting. And I wanted to move on. Kind of, you've talked around what you've built there, and from a technology perspective, I wanted to focus more on the kind of culture and kind of tech team side now, because you're super experienced and been around the houses in terms of being a technology leader. When you chose to build your team at Insify, for example, it kind of noticing from if LinkedIn is accurate, I know it requires on people inputting the data in, but most seem to be located quite near in terms of Amsterdam, North Holland. Like, was that a big consideration for you as a CTO when you were coming into Insify, when you're building your team? Because every CTO or engineering leader that I speak with, they all have their different nuances as to why the business or the tech team is structured in a certain way or positioned in a certain part of the world. Like, what were the considerations for you in keeping your team quite close in one location?
Yeah. So if you look, I think I've been in the previous startup I was in this fintech was an Australian company, and I built a team in the Netherlands, and we had a team in Sydney, which is 10-hour time zone difference.
Yeah,
which is tough. And we kind of treated it as a single team, which actually worked out. But it's, so that's so remote kind of pre-COVID was kind of bread and butter for me already. Yeah. But you see, if you the amount of learning that you have to do in the market to really get close to the customers from that perspective, you want to make sure that you share those learnings and do that very, very well. And then to be close together is simply more efficient. With that, I think we've been looking at to build this kind of scalable technology where you can have kind of single technology base that has really deep kind of data insights coming out. It's super tailored, but the real challenge there is to very, very quickly bring up new products and change products to kind of learn in the market and do that then with a very high quality. You need some very, very solid engineers. And so we've been looking very much at locations where we can find engineers that have a very, very solid kind of engineering background, where the engineering background is in the education, in the culture, in the companies they used to work with. And actually, I'm kind of a sucker for diversity. So I think out of the team, we have lots of different cultures from all over the world, and actually a lot of people relocated to the Netherlands to join us, and that makes it really, really fun. It's I always say that, you know, if everybody is special with their culture and their background, then nobody is special and everybody works together, and and that really works out.
And do you go into the office regularly at Insify, or is it just fully remote but within Amsterdam, or is there a kind of split hybrid approach?
It's hybrid basically.
Yeah.
So people are in the office and at home basically. So we kind of continued on the after COVID. Basically, we got more back to the office, but it's a mix, and we're quite flexible.
Yeah. And finding good engineers, solid engineers at the stage you're at is so important, you know, from someone that recruits on that side. I know how difficult it can be. There's a lot of engineers out there, but it's trying to find, as you say, that culture adds, and not just someone working with the latest and greatest tech, or has all the right technology stack on the CV. And it's tough to kind of separate the two. You know, when you are, as a CTO, I was just interested to pick your brain. Like, what traits do you look out for when you're scaling your team at this point? You know, such a critical point. Are there any things that you can pass on that's always good to look out for when you're going through these hiring phases for the listeners?
Yeah, so if you look at, again, kind of the scalable technology that we need to build, and kind of the speed of bringing a new product to the market, to basically follow the lean startup principles in essence. And in every country, at every product, in every market that you open, you follow those principles again. Then what you need is not so much people that are, you know, very experienced in one particular stack, or know everything about insurance tax solutions. We very much follow the kind of principles in our code base of Uncle Bob, if you know it. The Robert Martijn is his formal name. The solid principles is very known as clean coding around that. And there's, for instance, one principle which is what he calls the open-closed principle, which is basically modules are open for extension but closed for modification. So you're able to add or compose new functionality without changing your existing code. And that prevents, you know, a situation where one change, you know, breaks something completely somewhere else. And that kind of, you know, way of thinking requires, you know, a deep understanding of your programming, and not so much of frameworks or things like that. So I look at, you know, to what extent do you really understand programming? And at the same time can get things done, which is very close to Joel Spolsky's kind of smart and get things done approach.
And how do you do that? How do you test for that in an actual hiring process? Do you just sling them over a test, or do you just spend hours with these guys asking, really just having a conversation? Like, how do you unturn that stone?
Yeah, so we actually do live coding. I really dislike kind of slinging over a test, because basically if you're as a developer, if you're recruiting, or if you're looking for a job, and everybody does that, and basically you have a day job in building all these tests, and it's kind of free consultancy. If you want that, well, go pay people for it. So we do live coding, and actually even the first interview, it's almost direct live coding. But it's not the kind of standard Google style interview where you have to do some kind of funky algorithm. And if you know everything about algorithms, you pass, because it doesn't make sense. We're not looking for algorithmic people. We're looking for good programmers. So the live coding really helps us to assess, you know, how does somebody reason about it? And then, you know, algorithmically what we code is trivial. Also programming language frameworks, I don't care. So I always ask, I say, well, whatever language, you know, suits you best, which is not per se the language that we will hire for. But I still have to come across somebody that says, okay, I'll do it at COBOL. I would be.
I love that. So you give them the
But
opportunity to, you kind of go at it from the all stack perspective and just say whatever you're comfortable in,
yeah,
let's go with
it's
that.
it's the old Polski, smart and get things done. And do you really understand the language that you're in? And do you know what you're talking about there? And that's kind of our approach. And then we do, later interviews again with coding, but then more in the normal kind of bread and butter, back end, front end, QA, whatever we're hiring for.
And Martijn, I just wanted to finish on hiring good, solid engineers, senior engineers to help with this wonderful mission at Insify. How does Martijn keep the tech teams happy life, happy work life? What's your kind of methods there in keeping the engineering and tech teams, happy and motivated?
I think generally, ultimately engineers basically like two things. If I make it very, very simple, and well, actually three, I would say. One is be at a place, preferably a product company where you can have an impact. And I think that's with Insify is kind of guaranteed. The impact we can make in the industry, impact to real entrepreneurs, that's lovely people that are really trying hard to make an impact themselves and help them, especially if you look at disability. Sometimes what our customers come back with, and the appreciation if something goes wrong, that they are covered. That's really nice to see. That's one. Second is it's always great to work with good people on really technical challenges, and I think the challenges we have are really interesting. And I had an interesting conversation with a VC a while back that said, well, insurance, technology is not so critical. And then after we talked about, the challenges we face in really what we want to automate and the data to get that right, the scalability, configurability, and this whole modular approach, he was like, oh, actually, this domain is really challenging, and there's still a lot of room for actual innovation and IP and I think the third one, so people like that, and then the third one is just to work with the right colleagues that understand what you're doing and appreciate it. And I think once you have a great team, people like to work with that team. But also it really helps that that I'm a proper techie myself, that I can understand that it's not just building features, but also look at at quality and take care of tech debt early on. Or that basically I think every good programmer wants to be that is good in its craft, wants to deliver well-crafted software. And they can deliver crap if it has to be fast and you throw it away later on. But ultimately, people take pride in their work and take pride in their craft. And if you can give that possibility, then people will grow and thrive, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Martijn, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. So many great takeaways there, particularly at the end, for everyone, I'm sure. But again, thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.